Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin. Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment with no punches held and no falsehood left standing. These two will debate real life issues from a Catholic perspective every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Sit back, relax, grab your cup of coffee, and enjoy the show. Here are your hosts, Matt and Kevin.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin here on the Catholic Family Podcast. You heard again in the opener here, your hosts, Matt and Kevin. And last week I said that was a little bit of a lie. Well, this week it's still kind of a stretch of the truth. I am not solo today. We have a friend of the show, a friend of Kevin, actually, who's joining me today. Eric is with us this morning for Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin. So we've got Monday Mornings with Matt and Eric. Kind of has a nice ring to it.
It does.
I feel like. How you doing today, Eric?
Good. I do like it. It's got a good ring. You know, when Kevin gets back, maybe we kick him out of his own show.
He might have to bounce him. You might have to bounce him out and start something new. Well, Kevin, he's still on a vacation. Last I talked to him earlier today, he was just boarding one of those ocean gates. He was going to see the Titanic. So, we hope he makes out well. That was a joke. He'll send us some pictures of what
it's
he.
It's the type of thing he'd do, right? They're discounting their tours right now.
Yeah. So he and his family are, boarding one of those Titan subs, which was the topic of our show last time. But anyway, so tomorrow is the 4th of July, and we did want to talk a little bit about that, Eric. We did want to talk about some other things kind of headlining the news: kites guiding cargo ships, and Bergoglio's latest appointee, Archbishop Victor Fernandez, who has some very interesting background. But I wanted to start, Eric. Wow, see,
that's all right.
It's natural. I might misname you a few times. I might misgender you a few times there.
Yep. You can call me
in 2023. Works. So, Eric. So this morning, or on Sunday morning, actually, Father Desposito, who is a pretty vocal, I would say, Sede vacantism priest on Twitter, he made this tweet that I read, and I said, tomorrow when the show goes on, I think I have to start with this because this is really, really good. Just a really brief, I wanted to read it and then just kind of move on, but I wanted people to hear it because I thought it was really good and it really made me think. So on Sunday morning, Father Desposito, who was ordained, I believe, by Bishop Sanborn, he's an RCI priest under Bishop Sanborn. So he's one of their more vocal priests, as I said. He tweeted, here it is, so I'll read along, quote, "Let us be clear. Sede vacantists are the only Catholics who are faithful to the Catholic Church. If you accept Vatican II popes as real popes, you are bound to deny, in one way or another, things which are proposed by the Church, either in a solemn pronouncement or in her ordinary and universal magisterium. Lefeverists, for instance, must deny the Church her infallible safety, and say, contrary to Catholic teaching, that submission to the Roman Pontiff is not necessary for salvation. Novus Ordo conservatives are bound to abandon the infallible condemnations contained in the syllabus of errors of Pius IX, since Vatican II has promulgated religious liberty as a right, while Pope Pius IX has condemned religious liberty as a heresy. To accept the papacy of Vatican II popes is to believe in the evolution of dogma, which is a heresy condemned by Pope St. Pius X. Bergoglio is clear, Father Desposito says. Protestants and Catholics now agree regarding justification. That would mean the Catholic Church has changed its dogmatic teaching of the Council of Trent. So if Bergoglio is a real pope, the Church is a false religion that changes with time like any other Protestant sect. Objectively speaking, you cannot be a Catholic today without being a sedevacantist." End quote. Now, I believe, Eric, you had a different journey than I have, but really interesting to hear those words because the more I studied and the more that I learned the faith and the more that I learned, all the truths of our faith and what church teaching is on all of the issues, it led me to this position. So just something that I wanted to share with everybody this morning, kind of get them, maybe, really more aware of how serious it is that we do accept all of the truths that the church teaches. As St. Paul says in Galatians, if anyone preaches a different gospel than what we give you here, let him be anathema. So the teaching church cannot teach a different gospel. There is one teaching, there is one body of truth that she will teach for all time. And I wanted to open the show with
Well,
that.
yeah, it's an excellent quote and well said by Father. I think one of the things it brings home is just how important that is, right? I hear a lot sometimes in, the traditional Catholic community where, oh, it doesn't matter. I just wish, the CMRI and the Sedes would get along with the SSPX and get along with the fraternity, right? Why can't we just all be one big happy family? And there's a problem with that way of thinking. Like, yes, we want unity. We would love unity. But at some level, we can't have unity with a group or groups that see this man, this heretic, as the true pope.
Yes, sir. Very, very true. Excellent. All right. So why don't we move on? So tomorrow's the 4th of July, Eric, right? And here's something that I've been thinking about, because you find in a lot of, I guess you can say, traditional circles, the more people learn the church teaching on a lot of these topics of what the church has taught regarding, say, things that America herself adheres to, they kind of become, a little bit maybe disgusted, or they're not so patriotic as they once used to be. America has a different essence than that of, say, France or Spain, right? She wasn't, her soil is not Catholic, whereas America was built on an entirely different spirit, right? So one of the things, before I get into the catechism here, because I think, we have so many people here have opinions, and I'd like to get yours too, Eric, but the catechism, I'm looking at my Catholic faith, it has some civic duties of what Americans should do and what should be. So if we think here, the church has condemned things like free speech, religious liberty, right? The church has flat out condemned that.
The Masonic principles, yeah.
Absolutely. But you think here, and this is where I'd like your thoughts here first, Eric, before we kind of jump into different sections of this topic. Free speech is wrong, yeah, but it's also the way our country is set up, the way our country is, it's essential, because the alternative would be a state-imposed religion, that might be contrary to Catholic beliefs. What if Islam was imposed by our government? Right now, you and I are very free to hear Mass, to receive the sacraments, to practice our faith publicly. There's no problem with you or I taking our rosary, standing outside of our home and being in the street and praying the rosary. You are free to publicly practice your faith. And that's not like that everywhere. So I'm curious your thoughts, Eric, briefly. How would you say that we might be able to balance what the church teaches regarding religious liberty, freedom of speech, and all those things, and what America is, especially as we approach 4th of July here?
Sure.
What do you think?
Well, and I think to start off, right, there's sort of a fundamental notion of society, right? A society is a group composed of individual people. And you can't impose a society that doesn't match the makeup of that people, right? So I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to look around and see Americans and say, well, most of them are good, holy Catholics. Let's establish a Catholic monarchy. That's going to be terrible. That's going to be just the absolute worst, right? You can't impose, even if it's the right thing to do, you can't impose a system of government that doesn't match the people that it's made up of, right? So really the steps we should be taking to make America Catholic again, I guess, would be on an individual level, right? Talking to people, converting people, bring more of those Catholic, principles and morals into society. And only then will we be able to turn the corner and start, having a more Catholic organized society.
Yeah, it made me think, actually, because I agree with you. It made me think of what happened with Roe v. Wade, right? We had the Supreme Court just over a year ago now overturn Roe v. Wade. Abortion went back to the states, and it was a group of 9 justices who legislated to a population of 300 million. Now, regardless of how right or wrong it may have been, we see in public polls that the decision wasn't that popular. We see that a lot of people, for the most part, favor abortion in some way or another, right? The numbers, if I remember correctly, they're not a lot who are like 100%, abortion through all 9 months,
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who do say, I personally oppose it, but I can't, quote unquote here, force my will on other people. And so it speaks to what you just said, how you would want first the body of the society, the people, to kind of cultivate this belief that kind of pools into our governing authorities, right? It kind of
Mhm.
doesn't work when you implement it from top down. If you were to have a president come now, Taylor Marshall comes to mind because he announced, I don't know if he's still running for president or not, but it was something that he said he was going to do. If you just have a guy come in there and just legislate that we are now a Catholic, a dictatorship or what have you, there would be a lot of civil unrest.
There'd be
You know,
civil unrest, and from a spiritual perspective, you'd turn away a lot of people,
right?
from liking Catholicism, right? All of a sudden, you have this dictatorship. You have people who might, throughout the course of their life, be brought to the true faith, say no and fight against that and, be forever turned against it.
Yeah, and I know people who they have said that I'm a traditional Catholic. This is not me speaking. I'm just
Hmm.
quoting some people. I'm a traditional Catholic, and I want no part of any so-called patriotism. I will not wait. I will not display the American flag. I will not take part in any so-called patriotic event. America was founded and built on principles that are contrary to the faith, contrary to my beliefs, contrary to what the church has always taught. And I can't agree with that at
No.
all. And I don't know your thoughts either, Kevin.
Yeah.
Man, I almost said Kevin again. I apologize. This is like a
You're
serious
good.
conversation. I
You're
keep saying,
dead naming
right,
me.
Kevin. So it's such a habit.
No, a quote that comes to mind with that is, "By your fruits you shall know them," right? And America
Mhm.
certainly has a lot of bad fruits, but it has many good ones. Specifically looking at the traditional church, the true church, right? You look worldwide, where is
Yeah.
really the hot spot of traditional Catholicism? It's not in France. It's not in, any
Yes.
of these other countries, Spain. It's in America. So for one reason or another, God has ordained that this is really sort of to be the United States of America has a special role to play in the life of the church.
And do you want to know who said that? Let me pull it up. Pope
Is it?
Pius the Go ahead.
Yeah. Who?
I mean,
Well,
you kind of gave it away there. Pope Pius X, Pope St. Pius X, he said this. Let me pull it up. I have one official statement from him and one non-official statement. So the non-official statement, as I pull up the official one,
yeah.
someone had told me that it was actually Pope St. Pius X who permitted American flags to be
Hmm.
displayed in sanctuaries in our churches because he said the spirit of America allows Catholicism to thrive there. And it's just what
Not
you said.
not only that. So one thing to notice when you go to your church the next time, the American flag is displayed on the gospel side of the altar, which is the higher side of the altar.
Really?
In every other country, the papal flag is on the gospel side and the country of origin is on the epistle side.
Really?
So
I
America was granted that special, I think, from Pope St. Pius X for
You
that
know more than me.
ability. Yeah.
Wow. All right, there you go. So maybe my unofficial comment is a bit more official now that you now that you back me up here. Here's the real quote. Here's something. It's available. I googled earlier. It was something along the lines of Pope Saint Pius X and the United States, like just relations. And he said, "Here's a quote. I love these Americans. They are blooming. They are the blooming youth of Catholicism. Tell them that I gladly give my apostolic blessing to their whole country." Now, Eric, there are people, and I've dived into conspiracy theories, over the years, and I think a lot of them end up being true and right. There are people who say, and I like your thoughts here, that it doesn't matter who we vote for, regardless of how liberal or conservative, because it's the Freemasons who really control our country, and every move that seems to be an apparent victory for the so-called conservatives is really just a Masonic game of chess. That we're,
Hmm.
we're we're really controlled by a much higher power than the president or any Democrat or Republican. And so some people, they look at that and they say, who I vote for doesn't matter because in the end, the Masons are controlling us. The Illuminati is controlling us.
Hmm.
Any victory that you might see, say for abortion or marriage, is really just a piece of that puzzle put into place to kind of keep this so-called conservative base in check. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think that there
Yeah.
really are good and virtuous and upright, say, right wing? I hate to use that term. I don't like using that. I hate that. But um, how do you blend the two? What are your thoughts there?
Well, no, I do think there are good people who go into politics, but they're very few. I mean, most good people just kind of want to live their lives, right? Um, but at some point, the whole idea of it doesn't matter, like the world's going to hell anyway, that just smacks of despair to me. One, right, which is, not a healthy outlook on life, right? It's not one that's really in union with the fact of, God's supremacy, right? Everything that happens either happens directly allowed or passively allowed by his will. The other thing is, I also think that outlook, is almost an excuse to kind of get away from your civic duty. I think it was Pope Pius XII. I don't have his exact quote up here, but he called the the right to vote, the exercise of that right, a grave responsibility, right? And so saying, well, it doesn't matter because the Masons are controlling everything anyway. What does that absolve you from our last true Pope's basically mandate to vote? I don't think so. At least I wouldn't for my conscience.
Yeah. So I turn, and I think too, one, people tend to think that like everything went, everything is bad post 1958, right? If you think about it though, our country has been in existence for some 240, 250, whatever years. And there have been Catholics in office very, very pre-Vatican who enjoyed the blessing of Rome, who were in good standing with the church.
Yeah.
So the idea that America is this, this wicked, tool of Satan, isn't. I really think that's a bit of a stretch. And I look towards my Catholic faith, the Catechism, or which we should allow to kind of form our conscience. And it does say loyalty to our country is a duty. We are responsible to God for the men we elect to office. He has permitted us to have this right and duty to select the men we vote for. Everyone who has the right to vote likewise has a serious obligation to use that right properly. And then it continues. Let's see. A Catholic elector must not vote for any candidate who despises the teachings of Christianity. Before voting, he should find out the candidate's views on education, marriage, etc. We are bound to contribute towards the expense of government by paying taxes. It is wrong to cheat the state in the what's my place here? It is wrong to cheat the state in the matter of taxation. Why we must respect and obey the lawful authority of our country, because it comes from God, the source of all authority. Now, this was kind of written towards Americans. This was not written to the people of 14th century France. This was really geared towards people of the United States. So as we approach this 4th of July holiday, I do think that there is nothing, because like I said, I know Catholics who are traditional Sede vacantists who say that I will not fly that flag. I will not show any allegiance to that. And
I strongly disagree.
As do I. I think we should have a patriotism. Doesn't mean that we agree with our leaders. Doesn't mean that we,
condone the errors or the evils that they put out.
Right.
We want the best for our homeland. There's nothing wrong in that.
And we should, yes, I agree. We should have a love for our country. It would have been a lot more fun if we disagreed, but we're just saying.
I know this yes, sucks.
Exactly,
what can we talk about that we can disagree?
Yeah, so perfect. So this 4th of July, please celebrate our nation. Be grateful that you are here, because there are so many people throughout the world who do not have this right. And a very personal story, briefly, days of my Novus Ordo world, but there was a Novus Ordo priest, I guess you could say, from Sri Lanka, where I used to go years and years ago. And he was a very, very devout, very prayerful man. And I remember speaking to him once, and he was kind of just alluding to the fact that you all come to Mass. This is kind of the Novus Ordo, so I'm just, putting myself in the situation. You all come to Mass so casually. He said, where I'm from, if you went to Mass that day, there is a very good chance that you would be threatened to be bombed, or that your life was on the line. And you take for granted that you can just get in the car, you come here for a half-ish hour or so, and you go out to lunch like it's no big deal. I think, a lot of countries don't have this right that we really do. And so do we want to vote for people who support religious liberty? I mean, that's a condemned teaching of the church. Well, here in our country, it does allow us to practice our faith and
as opposed to people who want to murder babies and that type of thing. Lesser of two evils is still acceptable, and I think Pius XII talked about that also.
It is. It is in the Catechism as well. Man, I closed the page. I could have finished
Just
reading
trust
from it
us.
because
Trust
it
us on
does
that
say
one.
it in there. If you have my Catholic faith, look at in the civil duty section. It does say what to do when either candidate is where we would want to be. And it does say to vote. Basically, it does say to vote for the lesser of the two evils because there is some good that can give.
And which realistically is going to be 99% of the people you vote for, right?
Who has been like fully pro-life? I don't think we've had one. Every president.
Every presidential candidate for sure. I don't
Right.
think it's not since we've been voting.
Right. You always hear that there's some sort of exception. I don't know anyone, in my opinion anyway, or my memory anyway, I don't know anyone who has been like fully opposed to say abortion without exception. But so anyway, moving along here, why don't we jump, Eric, to I want to kind of just touch on Archbishop Victor Fernandez. How about we just go to that?
Works.
Our pretender Pope in Chief appointed Morris Letizia ghostwriter Archbishop Victor Fernandez, who is the author of this. Listen to this. Heal Me With Your Mouth, The Art of Kissing. Now, Eric, I Googled that book, and the front cover is everything you would imagine. It looks like it is a rated R type of book. I didn't read it. I didn't look at excerpts, but some people did quote a few things, and there are some explicit scenes in it, so I'm really not sure what's going on there. But now he is the new, or will be the new prefect in the dicastery for the doctrine of faith. Now, before I get your thoughts on that, there might be some people who say, well, what does that mean? What does that mean he's the new prefect for the dicastery of the doctrine of faith? What does that mean for me? Well, I looked it up because I wanted to read an actual definition of what the dicastery for the doctrine of faith actually does. Now, this here is just it's like you can't make it up, as Mario of Novus Ordo watch. You can't make this up. Here is what the dicastery of the doctrine of faith does. So this guy's job is to, quote, it's the oldest among the departments in the Roman Curia. Its seat is the Palace of the Holy Office of Rome. It was founded to defend the Catholic Church from heresy and is the body that is responsible for promulgating and defending Roman Catholic doctrine. Now, Eric, this guy here is going to head this thing. Listen to what he said in a 2003 March 2003 sermon, and tell me if you think that this guy is fit to be the chair of this office that will defend the church from heresy and promulgate true Catholic doctrine. Ready? Here's a quote. This is so-called Archbishop Victor Fernandez. You know, for many centuries, the church went in another direction. It unwittingly developed a whole philosophy and morality full of classifications to classify people, to put labels on people. This one is like this one is like that. This one can receive communion. This one cannot receive communion. This one can be forgiven. This one cannot be forgiven. How terrible that this has gone on into the church. Thank God Pope Francis is helping us to free ourselves from these patterns. End quote. Go ahead, Eric.
Wow. Well, it sounds like he's peas in a pod. If the reading,
music to Bergoglio's ears.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and so I've read some articles saying that this is basically just a formality, right? That this Fernandez guy has always been sort of in the ear of Bergoglio.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's, kind of shocking for that to be formalized, it's also not a huge surprise, it sounds like. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, like that position. I think that's the same position that JP2 put Ratzinger in. Wasn't it? Wasn't he sort of like? I think
yes, you're right. Correct.
And that's kind of what propelled Ratzinger to even be a papal or quote unquote papal candidate in the first place.
I see what you're saying there.
You see where I'm going here? I'm starting my own conspiracy theory. We might have number 7 anti-pope.
Pope Victor Fernandez.
Fernandez.
Too, huh?
Just a thought. I don't know.
So here's what's interesting, right? His job is to protect the faith of the Catholic Church. He says here, this one can receive communion, this one cannot receive communion. So glad that Francis is ridding us of these patterns. Why doesn't he look at what St. Paul actually said? And I have it here, 1 Corinthians 11, 26 and 27, verse 26 and 27. For as often as you shall eat this bread, you shall shoot, blah, let me start again. For as often as you shall eat this bread and drink this chalice, you shall sue the death of the Lord until he come. Therefore, whosoever shall eat this bread or drink the chalice of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord.
Which is directly relevant because this guy's the ghostwriter of Amoris Laetitia, right?
Yeah, he's not
which
doing
is
a good
specifically
job.
opening the door to allow, divorcees and
Divorces,
those who have remarried specifically to receive communion.
So this is part of the reason why, Eric, and this is part of the reason why we take the position that we do, because as I kind of opened the show, and I didn't intend to make this connection, but St. Paul, not only here speaking of communion, which is actual church teaching, but when he says, if anyone teaches differently from what we have given you, let him be anathema. It is simply because, again, the teaching church cannot change. The teaching church does not give you different gospels and different doctrines throughout the ages. Otherwise, there's no point. So here we have a clear evidence that we're moving in the direction of the quote-unquote teaching church. These are men of hierarchy who are promulgating with the weight of the magisterium to change who can receive communion, who cannot. He doesn't like this. This can't be. It's not like the church can do this, and when they do it, you resist it. No, it's that there's the divine assistance of the church that protects it from ever doing this. And we have clear evidence here that there is no divine assistance, which can only lead us to this conclusion that, well, then they don't hold office, then they don't have authority to hold these offices and to teach. And like you said, I see where we're going with this. What do you think, Eric, about Bergoglio continuing to put people like this? And this guy is also going to be a future elector into power. What do you think that says of his legacy as he gets older here, as he ages?
Well, I don't know how old he is, but he's got to be getting close here.
Yes.
Every time he does something like this or says something like this, I always think, man, this is the straw that's going to break the camel's back with the R&R groups, right? Because I've got many close friends, many close family that, follow that position, that he's just, a bad father or whatever.
Right.
And every time, like, is this it? Making this guy your right-hand man and the guardian of doctrine who wrote an R-rated book on kissing. Like, is that the straw? And I don't think it'll ever be the straw. I think at this point, if you haven't seen the light already with regards to Bergoglio, I think he's maybe not consciously, but at some level realized that, well, what can he do? He can just do whatever he wants now.
Yeah. Because one of the points that I've made many times with Kevin, and we kind of gone back and forth a little bit on it, is that John the 23rd and Paul the 6th ushered in this new church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of had Benedict and John Paul II as kind of like that bridge.
Quote unquote conservatives, right?
Right. Conservatives who were living in an a post-Vatican world, but they bridged a lot of that old, pre-Vatican faith over.
Mm-hmm.
Bergoglio is completely conciliar. He's of a different mold. He's of a different cut. Those days of John Paul II and Benedict XVI kind of marrying the pre and post conciliar church, those are over with. Mm-hmm. They're done now. They're gone. We are fully conciliar here, and we're seeing the fruits of it, as you mentioned here. These are the types of men that he's putting in power. He has given many heretics such as this authority and put them in high offices in the church. He's shaping his successor in one way or another. I believe somebody said like 70% now of the cardinal electors were put there by him.
Yeah,
he is
packing the court, so to speak.
Right, he's packing the court. Right. So he's really taking it that way. Very interesting to see what's going to happen. Archbishop Victor Fernandez is taking the helm in late September of this year. So we will see what comes of this. So
and call me crazy. At some level, this is what I'd rather see, right? The sort of validation of the doctrine, right? The worst thing was the motu proprio that Benedict XVI put in, allowing the Latin Mass to be said only after most priests were no longer validly ordained, right? Like, that's just diabolical.
Yes.
Like, actually showing their true colors, like, thank you, Bergoglio.
Right.
At least you're being honest about what you actually believe.
Right. I was actually just talking with somebody about that after Mass, that it's like as wicked as he is, it's at least he makes himself clear.
Yeah.
You can recognize the wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the previous two, I've shared my story many times.
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with Benedict. I
Mm-hmm.
thought he was the be all. I thought this was like, wow, this is what a pope should be and should look like. Very deceiving. So,
Yep.
Eric, it was great to have you on the show. Maybe we can fire Kevin, and he's got a 10-year contract.
Don't volunteer that. He will take you up on that in a heartbeat.
He's got like a Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh type radio contract.
Can go on vacation 2 weeks. Let the peons like us fill in.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, tomorrow is the 4th of July. I hope you all have a very safe, happy, and wonderful day. Please. Don't forget the unborn in your prayers. We are, again, 1 year or so removed from the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Still a lot of work to do. So please remember them, that human life does begin at conception and ought to be protected. And pray for our church, pray for our faith, pray that we get a true shepherd. And Kevin should be back, I would think, next week, but we'll see. In the meantime, Eric, was a lot of fun chatting with you today. Thank you for hopping on with us.
Thank you, Matt. God bless you.